once again for clicking into another edition of Sasquatch Encounters. Today we have a gentleman who has had a sighting while in Brown County, Indiana, and then another encounter in Fort Stewart, Georgia. This is going to be an exciting interview for me as well because this will be the first time I've heard his encounters. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and welcome Matthew McGuire to the show. How are you doing today, Matthew?
Hey, how's it going?
Great, great. How's everything going over there in Indiana?
Oh, not too bad. We're just trying to stay dry today. Got a little bit of rain in the area.
So we're going to jump right into it. I'm just curious, when did you have your first sighting?
My first sighting was when I was about, 9, 10 years old, something like that. We was down in Brown County. There was a little town there called Travillac, and I had some relatives that lived in that town there at the time. What it was me and my cousin and 3 of his friends went out behind my aunt's house there to the woods. And just like any other kids, we wanted to go explore the trails and stuff like that. We ended up on like a little game trail. It was just about as wide as your feet put side by side. It wasn't very big, and there was a lot of undergrowth there. Well, the first boy went down the trail first, and I went second right behind him. Then everybody kind of fell in behind me. We had walked for, I don't know, probably a couple 100 yards back in through there. And then we came up on this little holler. Well, the boy in front of me had came to a stop, and I just wanted to see, what was on down in the bottom there. So I stepped on around him, and about the time that I got in front of him and came to a stop and was getting ready to look, lean a little bit forward to look over, something up from my left. I mean, I don't know if it was standing on a limb, up on a rock, a hill, what it was on. Because, it really just, out of nowhere from my left, this thing jumped down. And if I'd have probably been a little less petrified, I probably could have reached out and touched this thing. When it hit the ground, it landed on 2 feet. It didn't make any noise. It had kind of long black hair. I'll never forget that hair. It was, like I say, this thing for, about a 10-year-old kid, arm's length, it was so close. You could feel the breeze off of it when it went by.
Wow.
All I seen was this big black mass in front of me. And it was standing there for a brief moment, and I could see this hair. The hair will never escape my memory on that. It was long and black. It was kind of coarse in a way, like a thicker hair would, not like a human hair or something, just a little bit thicker it seemed like, because the color was so deep. I'll never forget that color. But as soon as it hit the ground and stopped for just a split second, it shot off to the right. And it tore through the woods like nothing was there. I'd never seen anything move like that. Me and my cousin and the 3 boys had left the area, needless to say, fairly quick, and had told my mom and them about it. And, we was told not to go back to the woods and everything. Well, we never spoke of this for a long time. And then, a few years later, I got to talking to my cousin about it and asked him what he had seen because I knew he was a little bit further back. And he was telling me that whatever he saw, how quick it jumped out, he thought it actually was, had probably brushed into me because he's seen how close it was.
Right. And
when it went to the right, he said he'd never seen anything move like that and how big it was. And it wasn't a bear, wasn't nothing like that. This thing was upright. I'd never in my life seen anything like that.
Sure.
But the strangest part of it was you always hear people talk about the smell. Unless it was just the total fear, and I didn't think about, standing there long enough to get a whiff or anything, but, I didn't smell nothing. There was no smell. Maybe it moved so quick and everything, we just didn't take time to think about that or what. But the one thing that was definitely apparent was this thing was big, and it moved like there was nothing around it. And I'd never seen anything like that. And I've been in the woods off and on over the years hunting, and I've seen coyotes and deer and pretty much you name it, and it's been out there, but nothing like this. I mean, nothing.
Right. Now you said it jumped down. What did it jump down from? I mean, was it from a tree, from a hill?
That I don't really remember, because I do remember I was looking forward, and I just remember seeing this thing coming down from my leg. It just caught my attention. There was something big moving, and when I happened to step, just to look to see what it was already in front of me. But it had obviously came down from my left. This didn't step across. I mean, this was like something that had jumped down. Where it was at when we walked up on it, I don't know, because, I mean, we really wasn't paying no mind to everything around us. We're just kind of watching our feet and the trail and all this. But it was, whatever it was on, I'm telling you, when it hit the ground, it made the most solid thud. I mean,
right.
Just like something extremely heavy hit the ground. But it was
good.
But yeah, whatever it was, and like I say, it might have been standing up on the edge of a little bit of a hill there or something, because like I say, Brown County area is it's a whole lot like a Tennessee and Kentucky terrain, a lot of hills and valleys and stuff like that. So it could have been anything. He could have been standing on, or her, or whatever it was. But it was just massive. I mean, massive. Height-wise, I really couldn't give you an idea, because at the time, all I'm looking at is just solid black in front of me.
Sure. Was it facing you when it jumped down? Was it like facing directly to you, or did it just jump down and you just happened to be there and it just took off?
Well, about the time, like I say, when the boy stopped in front of me and I had walked in front of him, and I had came to a stop, about the second or so after I had stopped, this thing had hit the dirt right in front of me, and immediately went straight to the right, like it was facing from my left to my right.
So basically it just jumped down and took off, and you just happened to be there.
Yeah, I think that we just walked up on one, and it didn't really know what to do besides leave after we was already there.
Sure. Did you ever get a look at its face? I mean, did it look at you?
No, that's something I didn't get to see, because like I say, the only thing that I did take a lot of note in was the fact that this thing was standing. I mean, it was like a person standing there, but the dimensions of it was incredible. I mean, it was bigger than any human that I knew at the time. I mean, because that size will never, I mean, I can never forget this thing. I mean, it's just that intimidating. When you see one, actually ever get to see one, there is a level of fear and intimidation that'll hit you like you wouldn't believe. I mean, they're a very impressive creature.
Right, and that's an interesting point, because that kind of brings up my next question. Was obviously it was scary. I would be scared. I'm a full-grown man. You were 10 years old, but did you ever? I mean, you were scared, but did you ever feel threatened? Did it make you feel like, oh my gosh, it's going to kill me, or did it just?
No, I never got that kind of the best of my knowledge that I can, thinking back of it, I never really felt scared like it was after me. I just felt like we had startled each other, because this thing was, as soon as it hit the ground, it was gone. So clearly, I mean, it wasn't after us for any reason, because it was trying to leave the area going the opposite way.
Right. Well, what time of the year was it? Was it cold, hot? Do you remember that?
Yeah, this was right around the summertime there. This was, I'm going to say probably around June or so, something like that. I mean, it was summertime. We were kids and all out playing and everything. Weather was nice. And the foliage was all green. I do remember that, because I remember it being so hard to walk down that little trail.
Right.
But this thing cleared through there like a car running off a cliff. I mean, it just wasn't stopping.
Sure. At what point did you think in your head, okay, this is this mythical creature, Bigfoot? When did you? I mean, it could have been years later. I don't know, but when did you think maybe that was a Bigfoot?
Well, I kind of, like I say, I put it on my mind. I tried to put it on my mind for a long time, and I really didn't tell nobody, because anybody tells these stories, the people that had never seen one or heard one or anything, a lot of people look at you like you're nuts. And for, if you'd asked me today, and I'd never seen one, I'd probably think you're nuts too. But, once you see these, they're just ingrained in your mind forever. But I don't know. I put it on my head for a long time, and then it wasn't too long after I got into service when I got down there to Fort Stewart when I had my encounter that brought this all back. Mm-hmm. And then it just confirmed everything that I'd seen when I was younger, that, these things are real. There's truly something out there.
Right. Now, by this time, you're going in the Army. I'm assuming the Army anyway. You're going in the service. You're down in Fort Service, Georgia. Tell us about that encounter.
We was down there in Fort Stewart. I was in the Army at the time, and I was in the artillery. Well, we'd pulled into this firing point down there. We was just doing through maneuver. We wasn't doing any live fires or nothing like that. But we pulled into this firing point, got everything set up. Throughout the night and the day, whenever you got a position set in like that, you have to have gate guards. People watching the roads in and out of the area and stuff. Well, that night, it was like the midnight to 3 shift, I think is what I got stuck on. But they came down there and got me to go help out with gate guard, which is basically you're sitting in a foxhole with a guy in an M60 machine gun loaded with blanks. But I remember it was kind of strange because we were laughing about this after I got to him. I finally found him because we wasn't supposed to have any lights on, so that really helped. But I go out there on this little gravel road that led back into the firing point where my gun battery was set up. And when I walked around the corner, and we had a really pretty moon out that night, really bright. And I looked down that gravel road, and I was kind of laughing to myself, thinking, wow, this looks like a scene for a really scary movie, these tall, dark trees and a lit-up gravel lane. This, looks like the beginning of a Stephen King book down through here or something. Well, I got down to the foxhole, told my buddy that, and we're kind of laughing about it. And I said, that'd be weird. I said, a road like this and something goofy happened, to us, of all people. And he said, yeah, you never know. Well, we probably shouldn't have said that, because the foxhole was sitting on right next to the gravel road, probably, maybe 10 feet from the actual edge of the gravel. And these foxholes are about armpit deep. We had some cover over the top, some branches and stuff like that. Well, we're sitting there, and we're just kind of talking to ourselves back and forth, real quiet and everything, and listening for the radio and everything. And all of a sudden, we get to hearing this real faint walk, like somebody's walking through a woods stalking, an animal or something. And it's getting closer. I asked him, I said, did you happen to hear anybody talk about us having a ambush from another battalion or anything, No, I hadn't heard nothing. Well, the whole time this thing's still moving to us. We sat there and got really quiet. Every step this thing took, it brought me right back to the day when I was a kid and that one jumped in front of me. You could hear the foot hit the ground. That thud, that solid, heavy weight thud. And as it got closer, it was obviously moving slow. And it was definitely a two-legged walking. It wasn't a four-legged. Because four-legged animals make more of a shuffle sound when they go through the woods. Two-legged is clear. There's obviously two individual steps. Sure. This thing got probably about 100 feet from us, and we're hearing it pretty good, stepping on stuff coming through. We kept sitting there waiting, and it got all the way up across the road from us. It was quite clear this thing was just on the other side of the road, right in the shadows. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know if we should try scaring it off by shooting off some blanks or whatever, because we didn't know what it was. So I thought I'd be funny, and I grabbed a small handful of rocks and chunked them over that way to see if it was a person out there, he's going to holler. This thing never made a sound. And I'd done this 2 or 3 times, and we still never heard nothing. This thing didn't move, and you couldn't hear anything. But when it finally did move, it sounded like if we'd have turned the light on, I think it was probably standing right there at the edge of the road. It had to be. Because, you could hear every step. When it did take off, you could hear, kind of breathing hard like it was panting to get away pretty quick or whatever, but big. Again, this thing was big because when it ran off, every step you could hear it hit the ground, and for quite a ways. I mean, it was just nuts.
Right.
I mean, my buddy was kind of, freaking a little bit. He's like, man, what all kind of animals they got in Georgia? And I said, well, that's probably one they don't have on the, the naturally known list there. I began to try to tell him about what I thought it might have been, and he didn't want to believe it. Well, we thought about reporting this, but we also knew that we'd probably been told not to say much about it, or we'd Section 8 and out the next day. But, we never did say anything to anybody, to any of our superiors or nothing, because we knew that stuff like that, would raise a lot of red flags on us.
Sure.
But it was quite clear that what we heard that night it wasn't human. There's no way. It was just too heavy. Every step it took was just clearly a very heavy something walking. But it was obviously by itself. We only heard the two steps moving at any time. So whatever it was obviously by itself. But when it took off and went back the other way, back across the woods, man, I mean, you could hear it. I mean, it really sounded heavy when it went running back through that way.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you had trouble finding the location yourself, I guess walking through the woods yourself, trying to find the location. Did it sound like this thing knew where it was going? Did it seem like it was, and I know it's speculation, but I mean, was it hard to tell whether it was coming towards you or going away from you?
Oh, no. It was quite clear which direction it was going. Because when you're out there like that at night, everything's pretty quiet. And, because during them training maneuvers like that, we're supposed, we're simulating that we're under, combat conditions, which means no lights, noise, discipline and all this. So, I mean, we didn't really have anything else that it could have been, as far as moving around back here, any of the other guys out behind us or nothing like that. I mean, we knew where they were. But this thing here, when it walked up, it was clear it was coming to us because the steps was getting louder as every step it took. And when it stopped, I mean, you could, if you had a way of doing it from where our vantage was in the foxhole there, if you looked across the gravel road, you could just about follow it with your eyes, listening to the sound of where it was. And when it stopped, it was pretty much, directly across the road from us. I mean, it was quite clear where it was. We thought about turning, flashlights on and stuff like that. And, I wasn't for sure how these things would react. So I just, told my buddy, I said, don't, just sit still, let it do its own thing. And apparently it must have seen us or got an idea where we was or something, because something startled it, because like I say, it turned and took off. And I mean, again, you could tell it was running away from you, and it was on two legs. It had to be, because like I say, it was quite clear it was only 2 footsteps going through the woods, not 4.
Sure. And it was approaching you slowly, but then it ran away quickly. Is that correct?
Right.
Right. That's an interesting story. Now, at this time, was it summertime, wintertime?
No, this was middle of summer, because the mosquitoes down there were very active.
Easy to remember.
Oh yeah, it was very active down there. But now the strange thing about both times, that after thinking about back over this, and the people that I have talked to about this. And I tried thinking about things that seemed to be parallel with each other. What happened the first time, what happened the second time. Both times, I remember it being really quiet. The woods seemed to be quiet. When this thing started walking up on us, at first, for whatever goofy reason that crossed my mind, this might be a Bigfoot coming up, and I'm thinking, well, no, it could be, we're getting ready to be ambushed like we had been before on other maneuvers. But like I say, when the closer this thing got, I mean, there was that level of, that fear and intimidation. because, I mean, it was quite obvious this thing was, we're at its house.
Right.
And, you know, that was the thing. Even after it ran off, my buddy was like, you know, he really didn't even want to get out of the foxhole, and I really wasn't too cracked about it either. I kind of wanted to stay there myself, but when we got out and, you know, they asked if we had anything to report, it's like, well, no, not really. You know, everything was just fine.
Right. Well, I mean, you didn't actually see it, so I guess it would be kind of hard to report it, but the sound of the footprints, the footsteps, and I want to just kind of touch on this for just a moment. Now, you mentioned that they sounded very heavy, which is important. But could you tell if the strides were there like a lot of time between each step, or were they real quick little steps?
Oh no. There was quite a bit of time. Whatever this was, you know, it had a pretty good stride to it, because that was the one thing I was listening to. Because, you know, when you're in, you know, stuff like that, you're trained to learn, you know, to try to, if you can hear them coming, are they moving fast to you? You know, are they moving away? You know, are they coming slow? You know, you try to, you know, all your senses really kick in, especially at night like that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when this thing was moving, I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, you know, which way is it heading? You know, is it coming up from behind us, from the side? You know, where is this? So once I realized where it was or what area it was coming from, and started listening, I mean, and trying to listen to the steps, you know, is it moving fast or what? That's when I noticed there was a lot of time. And I told him, you know, like I told my friend there, I was like, you know, listen to this. You know, this thing's tall, whatever it is. I mean, we're talking about whatever it is. It's got to have some long legs, because there's a lot of time in between them steps. And, you know, the next day after all this happened, we were just kind of curious. We was off duty and stuff. We walked out to the edge of the tree line there, and just, you know, for, you know, comparison, I walked normally through the trees, you know, through the woods there, and he was listening to my steps. Then when I turned around and came back, I took long strides, slow strides, like what we heard. And I could pretty much simulate, you know, how it was sounding, but I couldn't reproduce that heavy hit, the way that foot, you know, whatever it was, you know, a foot or whatever it's walking on, I couldn't reproduce that sound, that heavy sound when it hit the ground. I mean, this thing was obviously heavy, very heavy.
Now, you know, you had actually just answered my next question, was going to be, you know, did you ever get an opportunity to go out and take a look and see what was going on or what was out there? Did you see any evidence of something that had been there?
Yeah, we did go back down there the next morning, and, you know, we had to be kind of cool about how we did it, because we didn't want anybody to see us out there piddling around, you know, places we hadn't been yet. And so, you know, when we was out there and what little bit of time we did get to look, you know, we tried finding footprints and stuff like that. We didn't find any prints. I mean, we looked, but there's a lot of debris on the, you know, on the ground out there and stuff. So, I mean, it's going to be kind of hard to find them, especially when you're, you know, also looking out for your gun sergeant and stuff too, you know.
Sure.
But, you know, I would love to have went back out there and really took the time and looked, because I really believe we would have found some probably pretty good footprints. And, you know, again, being here in Indiana, I would love to go back down to Brown County and, you know, some more hunting. And if anybody in the area around here would do it, you know, you guys could hit me up on Facebook, and, man, I'd love to go. I mean, I'm wanting to see some more of these and learn more about them.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because I'm actually 2 hours maybe from Brown County myself. So maybe at some point we can hook up and get out there and check it out and maybe see what's out there.
Man, that'd be great. I'd love it.
Yeah, it would be fun. It'd be a lot of fun. Now, I do have one more quick question about your encounter at Fort Stewart, and that is this. And you mentioned that you picked up a handful of rocks and you kind of threw them over that way. Now, was there a pause? Did it come to a stop and almost like, or did it just quickly turn around and run away?
No, as it was walking up, right there, about the time it was probably within, I don't know, maybe 50 feet of where we had figured it had stopped at, I had already thrown one handful over that way. And this thing never changed its stepping, nothing. I mean, it was that slow, steady stride all the way there. And the second handful I threw is when it stopped. And that's when we, figured we better knock this off because we don't know what we're messing with here. And we're only carrying blanks, and that ain't going to work. So we kind of just held our place right there and was trying to listen to see if this, if it was moving closer, if it was, what it was going to do. And then all of a sudden it just turned and gone. It was out of there. Right. And that's when it was starting to take off. I thought, well, maybe I can get it to holler. So I threw another little handful out that way. It never made no noise, but it sure shook the ground when it took off. I mean, you could feel the steps. Right.
That's interesting. So it was obviously pretty close then for you to feel the steps. But the reason I asked that question was because I wondered if it knew you were there and you threw the rocks, it would make sense that it turned and ran pretty quick, because, I disturbed them, let me go. If it stopped for a minute and kind of stood there, then it would be almost like, okay, it's wondering what's out there, what's throwing rocks at me. You know what I mean? So I was just curious if it maybe had an idea you were there or not. Do you know?
Well, that's kind of what we wondered, maybe if it's seen us or not. But, the next day when we were down there looking around and everything, we went back over to the foxhole where we were at that night. And it had been really, really hard to see us because we had real good cover over the top and the opening in the front, we were almost, our eyeballs were almost level with the ground, if we squatted down a little bit. So, it had been pretty hard to notice us. And I think that's probably what got its attention. It realized then we were close. And then one of us probably moved or something, probably caught its attention, caught its eye or something. And it realized it was just within, an arm's throw from us. But I'm just glad it didn't decide to cross the road there. If it had crossed the road, it'd have been in the hole with us. No problem.
Right. Well, Matthew, I'll tell you what, that's a great. Both stories are fascinating, and I definitely enjoyed listening to both of them. If you have any other encounters, or you're out at Brown County and you see something or you hear something, let me know, and we'll be happy to go through this again and listen to the news stories. And if at some point, I'm sure that I definitely plan on getting out this year. I'm not sure where yet, so Brown County is just as good as anywhere else, and it's fairly close. So there's a good chance that I'll be hitting you up and maybe checking our schedules and see if we can't work something out.
Hey, that'd be great. I'd love to go back out and try it again. I'm telling you, once you see one, you want to see them all.
I hear you. Well, Matthew, I appreciate you taking the time to share your stories with us and give us the step-by-step encounters. And if there's anything else, do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, just like I say, if anybody in Indiana, wanting to go out and do a little squatching, just hit me up on Facebook, and I'll be happy to get back with you. And we'll see about setting up a time and maybe a weekend and go out and do it.
Good deal. Well, thanks again, sir, and you have a great evening.
Hey, thank you now. You too.